So, introducing our next speaker is a man who has a finger in every pie, or rather a foot in every bucket, one being in the academics, teaching at the California College of the Arts, and being in the consulting world. And Alexander Baumgartner is today going to talk about his case study with GE. So a warm welcome to Alexander.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. It's great to be back. I already feel like I'm like kind of a old school regular next person here, which is great. So I know it probably has been a long and awesome day, and what I'm going to talk about today is some, I think, interesting stuff. Nonetheless, to scale that down, talking about scale, to scaling the topic down to 15 minutes is quite a challenge. Let's see how I am doing. So I am mainly these days an academic. I'm teaching at the California College of the Arts in San Francisco and in Oakland. I'm teaching in two programs, the MBA in Design Strategy and the BFA in Interaction Design. And in both programs, I'm teaching the Experience Design Studio, which is a studio about the holistic design of product and service ecosystems. Sounds pretty abstract, but it isn't. Americans, right? There is like 1/3 is theory and the rest is just doing. But today, I will speak about something else. So next to my teaching, I'm also a management consultant. And one of the main projects I've been working on is a project for GE. I think I don't have to say much about GE. I guess there's nobody in the room who doesn't know GE, one of the biggest companies in the world. I'm working in a group that's called the Design and Experience Group. And what it means, we will learn in a minute. But I think it's very important to understand what GE's current strategy is. And anybody who has heard about the term the industrial internet in this room? Whoa, wow, not many. So in America, the press has already like totally adopted it, even though the CTO of GE made it up. It's essentially the Internet of Things on a very, wait for it, very large scale. GE is in a lot of businesses, in a lot of industries that produces a humongous amount of data. And they have made a conscious choice, and it's no secret that Jeffrey Immelt said that software is now as important as hardware to basically make sense of all the data that the machine produces and make the interaction between people, data, and machines more efficient, better. I mean, when they say better, they mean make more money with it. We as designers look at it a little different. Nonetheless, here are just a couple of examples, and I have to prepare you. I have a couple of nice pictures. When we talk about the design system stuff for GE, I cannot show you much because there's not a single product yet in the market. This will happen by the end of the year that we have been working on. Nonetheless, what are these areas to understand what the industrial internet means and why GE have started this immense effort focusing on human-centered design? Think of it. In cities and infrastructure, one of the markets of GE, a lot of data is produced. They are working on grid solutions as a service to make sense of those data and making urban infrastructures more efficient. They build power plants. Power generation facilities create a lot of data as well. They're creating solutions to monitor this. Hospital operations, healthcare, GE, one of the big players. Again, they make sense of the data to create better experiences and create more business. They are in aviation, hospital operations management. That's wrong. Maybe there will be a GE hospital on a plane soon. They are in transportation, so it's about a rail network optimization. And obviously real-time operational intelligence, which in the oil and gas industry, oil and gas as well. So, but this is an interesting point because the real-time operational intelligence goes in some respect for all of their industries. So, pretty much 2 years ago, they found out, they were not aware of that they are amongst the 10 largest software manufacturers in the world. Just by accident, because they are so big, they produce all the software. It's not consistent, it's not coherent, it's a mess. So, but when we want to connect people, data, and machines, we realize data and machines, it's software and hardware. And what they made a choice, they looked at the numbers, they did some napkin sketches, which are working very well from a human-centered design perspective, how efficient they can be from a business perspective. I wish I could talk more about that, it's another talk. And they have made a conscious choice to now create human-centered design systems to connect the big iron, as they say, and the big data. So how do they do this? Systems approach. I always say like Dieter Rams on rails. But looking at the scale of GE, this is quite a humongous effort. Best computers in the world to do this, human brains, design minds. This is a recent photo where some of the core team of the design experience group is sitting in a circle. I love circles, as you might have noticed, and we'll see more circles. Talking about these issues. Design systems. Again, complexity scaled down. Essentially, pretty much 12 months ago, we started an effort inside GE, creating this new group, which was tasked to start a design system that can work across industries, in all segments, across software and across hardware, to basically transfer the GE brand to create a consistent and coherent brand experience across all the different touch points that GE has. So, and again, I say it's very important to understand that we are talking about digital and physical here. And I give you just one example in terms of what that means. Here, you see one of those devices. And what do we see here? We have a sub-project in the design system project with only targeting controls, because only looking at controls from a GE perspective in terms of hardware controls on devices, software controls on pure software systems, and hardware-software combinations is already a tremendous, I wouldn't call it a problem, it's a fantastic challenge to have, especially if like you're the CEO of the company puts $1 billion behind it. So again, totally reduced down. So we are looking at developing a design system, we are looking at behavior, style, and code. And when I say code, don't just think about software code. It's about the codification of style and behavior into any experience. A physical, a digital. Think of the control again, of the little knob, and of an interface that you touch by touching the screen. This is obviously entirely driven by the way the businesses work and all the stakeholders in the ecosystem and the ecosystems. Any of you has heard talk me before, and in one of the previous conferences I talked a lot about systems thinking and systems design. I have to skip this, there's no time for that. But this is basically applied here from a human-centered perspective. So this is extremely reduced. Think of it. I mean, usually as a human-centered designer or a user experience or service designer, we look at the intersection of like, what creates value for people, what creates value for the business, right? And we look at this intersection, so we have return on invest and return on an experience, and boom, everybody is happy. Here, we have multiple layers of stakeholders, right? So we have multiple layers of internal stakeholders, we have multiple layers in the business. So in the businesses that then have like subdivisions and such. So there is no way to create kind of basically a monolithic system, and then try basically rules that you then try to like whip into the organization. Doesn't work. Too large, it would never work. So what we did is like, we said, okay, we have to create a program which basically works almost like a fertile soil that we like bring into the organization, which comprises of certain levels of design consistency around experiences, either in the digital or physical realm, cultural change, which is also basically brings, oh God, the term design thinking comes to mind, but let me more call like bringing design minds and the way design minds work, and you have probably heard a lot about this today, bringing this to the table of people who have never heard about it before, that are somewhere in the Midwest of the United States or somewhere in the middle of rural Germany, because this is where like GE sites are. Nonetheless, at the end, if you condense it down, there are always three big stakeholder groups, and this is not GE typical. We all know this, which is the engineering mind, the business mind, the design mind. And this is something that we analyze. So we analyze these stakeholder groups and really thought about stakeholder engagement with the design system. So I often refer to this as as internal design, so where we basically use service design to create so that better services get created in the long run. So everything that you know about like customer journeys and so we all use this internally, and our product is the design system itself that we wish to be used for future product and service experience across GE. So designing the system engagement. I don't want to get into it too academic, but I'm a big fan of the experience cycle, which has been developed by Shelley Evanson, Hugh Dubberly, and Paul Pangaro a couple of years ago. They wrote a little paper. They're not really continue to work on it, but I think it's a fantastic model if you're matching it with. For me, it kind of, at this moment, it encompasses the core of customer journeys at large, independent of any experience, the best. So if you combine it with other models, it's very helpful. Don't even try to read it. I was just lazy to put this in what I show to my students. And the coolest thing is about it, it's the nature of the cycle, because it's a fractal nature to that. So every stage of the cycle, no matter if you're in the attraction stage, orientation, interaction, extending, or advocacy stage, it goes, the same cycle applies for each stage itself. And it's really interesting. Anyway, we use this to basically, based on talking to all the different stakeholder groups, looking how they actually currently go about designing their software or hardware systems, their physical devices, and looked at core patterns and designed journeys around it. Journeys around how they are designing and how they are using design systems. So what we then did, we basically created, based on existing patterns, and just for some people that are in software, we used already existing libraries that are out there for software systems to basically adapt those and create early stage core components of the design system that we thought these are the highest needs and they will gain the highest adoption fast. And we basically piggybacked all the other efforts on the early adoption elements. And I wish I could show you something, because it's pretty hands down. Because when you do this, then like a design system for, let's say, a design system for a mobile experience across businesses scales fast. But you have to live with the notion and with the, well, I wouldn't necessarily call it a danger, but you have to live with that they will adapt it. You can't control what they do with these early components. Of course, they come and say, oh, I make it a beveled button because I love beveled buttons. So anyway, how did we do this? We we looked really at what's the core at a business. It's projects and programs that are established, where the design system is to be used. So, but between some business folks, like setting up a program or a new project, or building a new oil rig, or building a new system to manage an oil rig, and using a design system, who cares? There's no real enforcement. Again, GE is the different industries, they are businesses of their own. They don't have to listen to the mothership if they have good reason. So it has to make business sense. So what we started first is we started an elaborate initiative. And what's the first thing? Before we designed anything, we designed a communication cycle, an engagement program, which was purely storytelling about the value of such an approach. And we used the experience cycle model again to basically answer the most important questions that these people had. All the different stakeholders, across stakeholder groups. And then basically had for the core stakeholder groups, for like the business mind, the engineer mind, and the design mind, clear answers why it makes sense to use the design system rather than building something on your own and going about it in a fashion that's disconnected from the grander effort. So then, this was basically fueling the design system engagement cycle. And again, this is way more complex than what I'm showing you now, but I think you will get the core idea. And the system engagement cycle is actually throughout when they are using the design system. And it's the same thing. They might run into a problem with it. I don't know, there's not an element that I need, so I create my own element, right? So from us, as the shepherds of design system, we then have also design system expansion cycle, which link to that and to the communication cycle. So we encourage the people, use the design system to build your own thing with it, play it back into the system, and we have ways to evaluate what works best, becomes a pattern, and is then broadcasted to across the businesses to be used, right? Let's say we find a nice pattern around telecommunication, you know, our own proprietary like Skype thingy inside GE. And I'm already at the end of, I figure, God, what's the guys talking about? But that's why I want to give you enough time to ask questions. And I could talk about this forever. And each of the cycles deserves its own talk. And I hope I can come back next year and then I show you actually examples, because we have scaled this. The organization has adopted it very fast. But nonetheless, you can imagine how long like project runtimes are. And the first products that will use it, also the ones that are like kind of like public facing and are not internal monitoring solutions, more the things that are more Marcom solutions, you will see coming out by the end of this year. And then you will see how it like massively clack, 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 falls in place, world domination. Okay, this is just checking if you're not falling asleep. So, again, why do I end it with this? Because I've shown you a lot of abstract graphics, because I couldn't show you like, hey, look, here are 100 like iPhone screens from 100 businesses, and they all look the same. You can imagine that something like that will happen, but that's not the point, right? The point is really there are people that are working in the organization. Some of the best designers in the industry like have made the leap like to join GE and do what they are best at, to create like human-centered product and service solutions and creating a system around that ultimately scales. We will see where it goes. When I was asked to come and give the talk, I said like, well, I can talk about it. I cannot really show a lot about it. It's by basically talking about working on an open heart, like a surgeon, trying to talk about a new procedure that has never been tested. It's just like one of the things that really gets us going. We are in a space, if I could show you the space, you would see industrial design systems, brand design systems, user experience, you'd see it all at once. We look at everything at once. We try to see this is the first time when we have the space to look at that. So this is amazing, and I'm very happy that that company, even though it's probably not entirely fueled by entirely humanistic intent, but maybe the design mind can change that a little bit as well in time. I'm an optimist, I'm sorry. And again, to remind you, I'm working at that school. If anybody wants to come and visit, we work a lot with America. We work a lot with corporate partners. Like in last semester, I did a study for the Volkswagen Electronic Research Lab on the future of mobility, for example. And so there are always ways, like we work with for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. There are always ways to engage, and it's an easy and nice way to kind of experience the California innovation spirit. And if you like, I'm not twittering a lot, but I really want to get 1,000 followers by the end of the year, and I'm at 700 or something. Took me 7 years. All right, that's it. If you have questions, shoot.
Your Twitter followers will go up every
Hopefully.
time I go to a conference. It
That's
always goes up, right?
That's my goal. It's my only goal.
Questions over there.
Hello.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. Thanks for. I just got the mic as first. Thank you. I've got a question around your definition of design. I thought it was quite interesting that you showed one Venn diagram where you associated design with style, and I was wondering if you could elaborate a bit more on that.
I put style in there because it translates better to most audiences. Like I could also say like form, aesthetics sometimes. Basically, the line of interaction where the experience becomes tangible to somebody, which is obviously often from a brand perspective, it has kind of a stylistic or it's basically stylistic or aesthetic patterns that are independent from the behavioral aspects.
Because that's a very interesting approach. Since personally being a designer myself, I think ever since I've been taught design, I've been kind of fighting for, looking at the design kind of world more on a kind of holistic approach and including the behavioral design and including the interaction design and not just limiting to form and style.
Yes.
And I think it's an interesting discussion as well when we talk kind of to businesses to educate them that design can do a lot more than just that one aspect.
So I think that the cool thing about this, if you're looking at a Venn diagram, is you can enter a Venn diagram from any angle, right? So I often say like all the human-computer interaction guys that come from it purely from a behavioral perspective produce horrible solutions aesthetically, or they're not anymore, but they used to. So, but sometimes if you tell a story about design, it's easier to enter through going through the door of behavior and then arriving at aesthetics. So you could also say like, hey, there are aesthetics involved as well, but it's a longer discussion. And or if you talk to brand people, you come purely from like a very visual perspective, and then go into behavior, and you even talk about like what there are visual patterns. Yes. So you can have one visual pattern that fits an array of different behavioral patterns. So, which is interesting, and we should talk more about it. And that would be a fantastic discussion, or a panel discussion even, talking about it, because the thing is, most of the people that I'm working with, or that I even teach with, we are all stretching how we learned about design quite a bit. But the funniest thing is when I read certain papers from the 60s, 70s about design education, they already all thought about it. Like I just read the other day, it's like, design is just like changing system A to a system B, which encompasses all of this, And that was a guy that came from the art world. Anyway, great question. There's, I guess, a little more time for another question.
One more question from Lee.
So my question is, the last graphic, really scary. It's like an engine on an engine and all that stuff is spinning around. So how do you prioritize? What is the tool or system or panel that you use to prioritize what you attack?
Yes, I should have talked more about it. It's humans. So there are no, thank you for that question, God. I love it. Because obviously I was like, oh, so you have these algorithms that kind of like find out which patterns are the best and which are not. That's not done by computers. That's human. So we have groups, subgroups that kind of like, they look at work together, they do critiques, they talk to each other. We have programs that facilitate that. Hey, it's America, it's cubicles. Sometimes the guy that works here doesn't talk to the guy who works there, but they should, right? And then they should figure out, oh, I want to share this by the end of the week, or maybe the next day with the other group, which is only one hallway apart. And we have programs to basically trigger that, and that's basically part of the engagement cycle. And then when human brains find, oh, this is worth making it part of the grander system, it's put in the system, spread out, and seeing what happens in the next wave. I hope that answers the question. Of course, it's entirely human-centered, and one of the things when we talk about big data, we always talk about, in the group we talk like, our job is to make big data small, right? Because it has to, there is the cognitive, the human apparatus that has to deal with it. And there will be, I'm a big believer, there will be no solution. All this we only do to have humans, still the best supercomputer in the world, make more informed decisions. But even with big data, you can't make the big decisions. You can make better decisions by using those systems to inform you better. All right, famous last words.
Good.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Alexander.